Hey everyone, it's me, Aaron, and I'll start off by being honest with you guys. If you had told me a year ago that one of the biggest and most important and detailed spoiler talks we were going to have all year was going to come from a video game that was a remake of only the first third of another video game that came out over 20 years ago, I probably would have believed you because it's a Square Enix game, and who even knows what is going on with modern day Square Enix games. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think it is safe to say nobody was expecting this, because for the longest time, people had been wanting a Final Fantasy VII Remake. They had been wanting to see that adventure that they fell in love with, now depicted in modern day graphics on a modern day console. They had been waiting for that. They couldn't wait for it to get here, and we had been getting told, oh, it's coming. It's coming. Don't you guys worry. That Final Fantasy VII Remake, it is on the way. We are working on it. We promise you it is going to be here. It's going to blow your mind. And what we got was not a Final Fantasy VII Remake. We got something completely different. And I am honestly really impressed by that. Now, before we actually get into the spoiler conversation, I should go ahead and let you guys know where I'm coming from, what my history is with Final Fantasy VII, because going into this game, there are going to be two kinds of gamers. There are going to be the people who played Final Fantasy VII, and the people who didn't play Final Fantasy VII, and they were expecting this to be their very first exposure to Final Fantasy VII. I am part of the third group, which is the people who started playing Final Fantasy VII, got halfway through, and then their PlayStations crapped out on them, so they couldn't keep playing it. And yes, as time went along, I got a PlayStation 2, which could play my old Final Fantasy VII game, but I looked at it and I was like, oh man, do I really want to play about 15, 16, 20 hours of this thing before I get to anything new? Do I really want to play for that long before I get to something new? And then time went on, and a few more years went on, and re-releases started coming out for it, and I kept thinking, okay, maybe I should play these re-releases, and no, it just doesn't feel right going back and playing a game that I've already played half of it. And then eventually they announced this remake, and I thought, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna wait for the remake. I'm just gonna wait for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then I will be able to fully experience this game all from the start. And oh my gosh, boy did I have the rug pulled out from under me on this one. And I bring this up because this is not just a regular Final Fantasy video game. No, this is a game that is made for Final Fantasy VII fans. This is a game made for people who played the original, loved the original, studied every little detail about the original, read up on all the lore, played all the other video games, because every single thing from Final Fantasy history comes together in this game. It all comes together in Final Fantasy VII Remake. I would not be shocked if in the next video game they end up, I don't know, having a vision of Cloud fighting Mario in Smash Bros, because every single thing that has to do with Final Fantasy gets put into the Final Fantasy VII Remake. But because I only played the first half of Final Fantasy VII, and I played it so long ago, I forgot a lot of stuff about this video game. So when I was playing this, it actually took me a while before I actually realized, oh, they're doing things differently now. I'll go ahead and just give you the most obvious example of what I'm talking about. Ghost. When the ghosts pop up at the beginning of this game, I looked at them, and everybody out there who has played Final Fantasy VII looked at that and went, oh, what the heck is that? That's not from the original game. I looked at it and went, huh, I guess I forgot about the ghosts. I don't remember that, but guess I just completely forgot about. Oh well, it wasn't until we got to that scene where the ghosts were attacking the town that I went, I think this might be new. I think this might not actually have been in the original game. And I will get into all this stuff about the ghost, or as I came to know them, the continuity creeps, a little bit later, but I just wanted to bring this up and address this right here at the start, because I know a lot of people right now are out there desperately searching for answers. A lot of people are out there looking for anybody's take on Final Fantasy VII. They're looking for all the spoiler talks about this. I'm letting you know right now, I have some thoughts about this. I have a lot of thoughts about this. I got a lot of theories that I'm gonna throw out there on this. But if you're looking for someone who knows this entire franchise inside and out, maybe come back to me later. maybe go out there and check out Gerard Khalil's video, check out Castle Super Bees, check out Maximilian Dude. They've probably got all the answers you're looking for. But then, if you're still hungry for some Final Fantasy VII Remake spoiler talk, then you come back to me. You know what this spoiler talk is? This spoiler talk is the last bar in town. This spoiler talk is when you go out partying on a Friday night, and you're out and you go to your regular bar, then you go to the fancy bar, then you go to the cool underground bar, and then they're all closing up around 2 or 3 a.m., and you walk out and you go, oh man, I'm not done partying yet. I still want to go partying somewhere else, but every single other bar in town is shut down, except for that one dingy rundown bar. It's not going to give you everything you want, but it will keep the party going. That's what this spoiler talk is. So let's go ahead and let's get into the spoiler discussion, and I'm just going to let everybody out there know this is solely a spoiler discussion. This is not me talking about my thoughts on the gameplay, on the music, on the characters. No, we have an official review of the game that is non-spoilery, and that's coming up later. So when we get to the actual review of this game, that's when I'm going to talk about all that stuff. This is purely talking about the continuity creeps, about the ghost, about the whispers. I call them the continuity creeps throughout the majority of this game, so I know that they're officially called the whispers, but I'm going to keep calling them the continuity creeps. And I call them that because if you've played the game, you know these weird ghostly specters that keep popping up and keep blocking your path and keep coming in and preventing you from going in there and doing what you actually want to do. They're doing that because they're trying to preserve the story. And I, as someone who forgot many things about the original game, didn't realize that until we got to the point where the plates fell. Because the first time that you see these things, it's when they're shoving Aerith out there to meet you. And boy, do we have some things to say about Aerith, but I'll save that for a little bit later. They're shoving Aerith out there to meet you. And as I said, when I saw that, I was like, oh, I remember just bumping into Aerith. Huh. I guess I forgot the ghost. I remember people in hoods. Is that what these things are? Huh. I don't know. I guess I just forgot all this stuff. So I just convinced myself that they were in the original game and I completely forgot them. And what's really weird is there are certain things from the original game that were put in this game that I convinced myself were not in the original game, but had been added for this game. Like Johnny. Johnny, I convinced myself, yeah, that guy is 100% just brand new for this game. That is a character that just created solely for the remake. And then I went online and I searched Final Fantasy VII Johnny, and then his little cube form popped up. And when I saw his cube form from the original Final Fantasy VII, I went, oh, that guy, red-headed cube. Okay, I know that guy. All right, I know him. Okay, so yeah, I'm kind of a little bit jumbled all over the place on this one, but I think I've finally gotten it all straightened out. Although very quickly, just bringing this up, there are some characters in this game who are new. There are some characters that were either created just for this game, or they came from Final Fantasy VII expanded universe stuff. Like the characters of Leslie and Kyrie, they actually came from a Final Fantasy VII novel called The Kids Are Alright. But this is the first time that those characters received actual designs, so I kind of count them as new characters. Any of the brand new characters in this game, any of the characters who got designs for the first time in this game, they were so jarring to me. I just have to go ahead and point this out right now because, yes, the original characters in Final Fantasy VII were designed by TETSUYA Nomura, but that was over 20 years ago, and over all that time, someone's sense of design and someone's art style is going to change. And he came in here and he designed these brand new characters, and I just looked at them and went, you are not from Final Fantasy VII. You are from something completely different. Like the moment that Leslie popped up, I looked at him and I literally thought, Noctis? Are we getting into weird alternate reality stuff with other Final Fantasy characters? Because that's just white-haired Noctis is all that is right there. That terrible baseball cap and jacket outfit that you can give Noctis in Final Fantasy 15, yeah, that's him. That's it right there. And it is just so weird seeing them. Or like Chadley, the little computer kid, that guy is just straight out of Kingdom Hearts. That guy is flat out of Kingdom Hearts. So it is just a little bit jarring, but I just had to get that out of the way right now. But yeah, so the first time that you see the continuity creeps is when they're shoving Aerith out there. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's just, all right. I guess that was something from the original game that I just completely forgot. And it wasn't until that moment in which they tell Cloud that he's off the next mission. And I was like, well, that didn't happen in the original, but they have to stretch this out. They have to add more content in there. So clearly now there's going to be a thing that we do that convinces them to put Cloud back on the team. Okay, that's how it's going to go. And then you'll wake up, and then you see the entire town is now overrun with the continuity creeps. And I remember looking at that going, okay, I definitely don't remember this. And I think if I was going to remember anything from the original Final Fantasy VII, it would be a town overrun by ghosts. That seems like something I would remember. And then the ghosts end up attacking everyone, and Jesse gets injured, and then they go, oh no, Jesse's injured. Does that mean that we have to call up the mission? And then Barrett looks over at Cloud and says, all right, you want me back on the mission? And I went, okay, so they got him back on the mission. But that was definitely something new they add, so maybe the ghosts are new, but it had not hit me yet. It had not hit me yet. That is what the ghosts were doing. They were basically correcting the timeline. And the next time that you see them after that is when you fight Reno and you end up beating Reno. And I remember thinking to myself, huh, that's not what happened in my game. When I played this, I definitely remember that I lost to Reno. And I remember I had to escape through the back of the church. And then the ghosts come in and they grab you and they pull you through the church. They pull you through the back of the church, so you have to escape from Reno. And again, even then, I was like, okay, I don't even know what you guys are doing, which is crazy that I hadn't figured it out by then. I absolutely should have figured it out by now, but it didn't actually hit me until the plate was falling. It didn't hit me until it got to that moment in which you see Biggs up there. And you run in and you try to get to Biggs, and then the ghosts come in and they stop you from getting to him. And at first I thought, okay, maybe these things are like the Grim Spectre of Death. Maybe these things are like Grim Reapers and they're just clinging to all the members of your party, because in Final Fantasy VII, Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge all die, but also Aerith dies, and that is one of the most famous deaths in any video game ever. It's definitely the most famous death in any Final Fantasy game, so maybe they're just really clinging to that. They're clinging to this idea that because this game is loaded with death, death is actually a part of the game now. It's actually this specter that you can see now. But then I kept thinking to myself, okay, it's not just that they were hanging around Biggs. It's not just that they were swirling around him. They kept you from getting to him in time to help him. And that's when it hit me. That's when it hit me. These things are fate. These things are the forces of the timeline trying to keep everything in order. They're trying to prevent you from actually making any changes. And as you go on with that level, you see them preventing you from getting to Jesse. You see them preventing you from stopping the plate from falling. And the one that really hit me was Wedge. Wedge was supposed to die when he fell. And I kept thinking to myself, okay, Wedge was supposed to die when he fell, so maybe they're not continuity things because they didn't appear then. But then you see Wedge trying to get his cats out of there, and he's just surrounded by these things, and you see the big plate coming down on him, and that's when I went, oh, that's absolutely what it is. These things were trying to prevent you from saving Biggs and the others up there, so they didn't have time to deal with Wedge down there. But now, they come for Wedge. Wedge isn't going to escape. You can't escape fate. They're here now to make sure that Wedge dies. And I'm just going to go ahead and address something right now. I'm going to sound like history's greatest monster right now, but I know the entire internet has fallen in love with Jesse. Everybody loves Jesse in this game. I hate Jesse in this game. I really do. And I apologize. I know that everyone loves her. I know that I'm going to sound like an absolute monster right now, but I could not stand Jesse in here. I know the entire internet loves that she is the thirstiest character that has ever been created for a video game. But goddamn, it was like pathetic at times to me. You know what she honestly reminded me of? I'm older than most people out there. I'm older than a lot of the other people out there who are watching these videos. I'm aware of that. And I remember back during the 2000s at like anime conventions, there was this big glomp phase going on in which just random people would come up and just start hugging other people and being super affectionate to them, and that was annoying as hell. That was awful. I'm glad that trend died down. And that is entirely what Jesse is in here. Jesse is nothing but just hugging on Cloud and kissing him, and he's just like, oh my god, get off me. And yeah, I was kind of on Cloud's side like, calm the fudge down here, lady. You don't even know this guy. It drove me absolutely nuts. Someone get her a glass of water because she is dying of thirst. It drove me nuts. So I know that when Jesse dies, we're all supposed to be like, no, Jesse. I was like, I don't give a crap at all. You know who I did care about? Wedge. I cared about Wedge so much, and I'm gonna jump around a little bit on this one right now. But Wedge, I will admit, I kind of have a soft spot for whenever there's like the cartoonish character, the punchline character, the character who is the center of jokes. I have a soft spot for those characters when they finally step up. When they finally step up and they try to be a hero and they try and make a difference. And that is entirely what Wedge was towards the end of this game. And I cared about him so much because of that. And there's that great moment when you've got Aerith and you've got Wedge there. And they're making the speech, and I don't remember exactly everything that they said, but I looked at it and went, oh wow, these are two characters who are supposed to die. And they're basically making a speech about how they don't want to die. And Wedge was just talking about how he just wanted to be useful, how he wanted to make a difference. And then you see him go up there and he starts pleading with the guards to open the gate. And then one of the guards opens the gate. And because of that, a lot of the people who were supposed to die in Sector 7 end up living. And I'll come back around to that in a moment. But I looked at that and I went, oh my gosh, Wedge, you did it, man. The comedic relief character came through and saved so many people. I love when stuff like that happens. And then you see that he dies, and he doesn't just die because the ghost came from him. He died because he tried to save his cats. He was trying to save a living thing. He was trying to save a poor defenseless animal, and that's why he died. But then it's revealed that he didn't die. He actually survived. And I looked at that and went, oh my god. Wedge is the proof that you can change fate. Wedge has gone from comedic relief character to one of the most important characters in this entire game, because let's be honest, the moment that we all realize that the continuity creeps are here to try and make sure everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, you know what they're doing. You know they're saying up, Aerith. You know they are saying up, Aerith needs to live. We need Aerith to survive. Everybody, ever since they were a kid and they played this game for the first time, they've been thinking, is there a way to save Aerith? I remember back when I was a kid, long before YouTube was a thing, long before if you typed in to a search engine, Final Fantasy VII, and they would just pop up, Aerith dies. Long before any time that you typed into a search engine, any video game out there, a character's name and death would pop up. When there were no spoilers like that, I remember I would pick up video game magazines at the grocery store and I would flip through them and there would be huge articles about Aerith dies in Final Fantasy VII. Could you save her by doing this? Everybody remembers that old myth about how if you had 99 Phoenix Downs, she could survive. Which, by the way, how great would it be if in the next game, it gets to that moment, Aerith gets stabbed, you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out a way to save her. And if you have 99 Phoenix Downs, your inventory pops up on its own, and then you just start seeing Phoenix Downs, 99, 98, 97, 96, and just start scrolling down, and slowly she comes back to life. How big would the freakout be if that actually happened? I know it's not going to, I'm just saying, how big would that freakout be if it actually did happen? But yes, as I was saying, we all know the moment that they introduced the idea of there are these things trying to keep fate in order and you can fight them and you can defeat them, we all knew this is leading up to Aerith. And Wedge survived, so Wedge proves it's possible. And you take Wedge over to Aerith's mom's house and he's recovering there. And I kept looking at that going, okay, there's going to be a post-credit scene. There's going to be a post-credit scene in which it's either going to be Wedge waking up, and that proves that fate can be changed, or Wedge is going to wake up, and the ghosts are going to attack him and kill him, proving that fate cannot be changed. So which is it going to be? Because it's going to be one of those two. I guarantee it's going to be one of those two, and then you're at the Shinra headquarters. I'm sorry, did I say Shinra? Shinra. You're at the Shinra headquarters, and then Chapter 17, Wedge pops up. Hey guys, Me, the guy who in the original game was supposed to die from falling from a very tall thing, decided to come to this 69-story tall building to help you guys out. I'm here now, and I looked at that, and there's like triumphant music playing there, like, yes, Wedge lived, everyone, and I just looked at that and went, no. You need to go back to that flower garden. You need to go back and rest. You need to just drink some OJ. You need to cover everything up in bubble wrap so that you don't fall and injure yourself on something. You need to go back and be safe. Because I looked at that and the second he popped back up, I went, oh, Wedge, you ain't out of this just yet. And sure enough, Wedge ends up dying. Granted, we don't see the body. We do not see the body, so he could still be okay. But we already did earlier in this game the whole Wedge fell, we didn't see the body, he turned out to be okay. Typically, my rule of thumb is if you appear to die once, you could still be okay. If you appear to die twice, you're dead. And his death is so sad too, because he's trying to push against the wave of ghosts and he's going for Biggs, for Jesse, and at this moment you still think that Biggs and Jesse are dead. So in your mind's like, no, you have to survive for them. You have to carry on their memory. And he's pushing back against them. And then he just goes, I'm sorry, Cloud. And then you hear the sound of the window break. He goes, I just wanted to be useful. And again, I cared about him so much. And I was just sitting there going, you were useful, buddy. You were. You saved the people of Sector 7. By the way, there is that guy who is one of the guards. And one of the guards is going, nope, we will not open these gates. But then the other guard opens up the gate. And then there is a moment later on where you're at Shinra headquarters and Cloud runs into one of his somebody who recognizes him as a soldier and says like, oh yeah, we used to work together. And I was like, what if it's the same guy? And then there's that moment at the end where Cloud is trying to get out of the facility. He's on the motorcycle and there's that one guard standing there and he's like freaking out a little bit. And I kept thinking, what if all these are the exact same guard? But I don't know, I think that's a little bit of a stretch. However, I will say, I feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity because you have that guard go up to Cloud like, oh yeah, man, I remember you. Oh man, we need to catch up, we need to talk again. Why wasn't that the guard at the end when Cloud is trying to get out of there? It might have been because they didn't give that guy any dialogue at all. But how great would it have been if the one guard who was standing in your way was the one guy who was trying to be friendly with you earlier on? Feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity. But okay, so as I said, we now know what the continuity creeps were. And even if you didn't know what the continuity creeps were, you definitely know what they are when Red 13 appears and he flat out tells you, yes, they're called Whispers and they're arbiters of fate. There are these things that are trying to keep the timeline in order and make sure that everything plays out. And what drives me nuts is that no one really asks for explanations. Like, they ask him for an explanation and he says, yes, when Aerith touched me, I learned everything about the Whispers. And then no one turned to Aerith and said, okay, how did you do that? How do you know that? And that's going to start getting into a couple of the problems that I have with how this game ended. But first, let's go ahead and let's talk about Aerith, because it becomes very clear as this game goes on, Aerith knows way more than she is letting on. It is very clear Aerith is aware of the previous game. Aerith somehow has knowledge of the previous timeline, of the previous Final Fantasy VII, where everything played out the way it was supposed to, and now she has that knowledge in this new timeline. And there's so many little tiny moments in there. Like, there's a moment in which she's talking to Marlene, and Marlene says, is my daddy there? And then she goes, you mean Barrett? And it's like, no one has mentioned Barrett to you. How do you know Barrett's name? So there's little moments like that, but my favorite one when looking back at it is her very first appearance. When she goes up to Cloud, and she hands him a flower and says, this flower is typically given between lovers who are reunited. And when she originally did that, when I was playing through this the first time, I thought to myself, okay, he's going to reunite with Tifa. He hasn't seen Tifa in a long time. He's going to give Tifa the flower. And of course, he does give Tifa the flower. But now, realizing that Aerith knows way more than she is laying on, realizing that Aerith has knowledge of the previous timeline, I look back at that moment, Aerith, who died in the previous timeline, goes up to Cloud, gives him a flower and says, this flower is given between lovers being reunited. She's reunited with Cloud. That is what that moment is. I love that little tiny detail. And there's so many other moments in there where Aerith clearly has some kind of knowledge of how the previous timeline worked out. But it isn't until later on in the game when that starts to become really obvious and they're just like, yeah, we're not even trying to hide this anymore. And it really just kind of shocked me that no one in our party ever really asked her for any kind of an explanation. And that is what my big problem is with how this game ends. This game ends with Sephiroth, and believe me, we're going to get into Sephiroth here in a moment. This game ends with Sephiroth just appearing, and then he takes out his Vincent sword and opens up a portal, and then he just walks through, and then Aerith walks up and goes, once we go through there, there's no turning back. That's where we're going to face all of these things, and this is the end. This is what we have to do to challenge destiny. And what I wouldn't give for someone, anyone, to go up to Aerith, grab her by the shoulders, look her in the eye and say, what does that mean? How do you know this? What are you talking about? Because basically she says, okay guys, we have to go and challenge destiny. And I was just like, why? I mean, I know why. I know why because I know the previous game. And you know why too, Aerith, because you remember the previous game. Nobody else in your party has any knowledge of this. Nobody else in your party knows what the hell you're talking about. All they know is that these ghosts are trying to keep fate in order. And yes, we have seen that be bad, but twice in a row, right before this, we saw those ghosts come in and save members of our party. We saw them save everyone in the truck from the explosion, and we saw them come in and save Barrett after he got stabbed by Sephiroth. So shouldn't at least one of them go, hold on. Why do we need to do that? Are we sure that fate is bad right now? Like, shouldn't someone have a question? Shouldn't someone come in and go, Aerith, how do you know this? This game is 18 chapters long. And chapter 18 ends with you escaping from Shinra, and it's the big motorcycle chase scene, which is so famous from the original game. And then it immediately goes into final boss time. And all I could think was, this game needed to be 20 chapters. This game needed to be 20 chapters. Chapter 18 is the motorcycle chase. You escape from all of that. And then you all sit there and you go, okay, we just learned about whispers. We just learned that there are things out there trying to keep some kind of a timeline in order. And Aerith, I think you know more than you're letting on. And then she goes, yes, there are some things I still have to tell you. And then we needed 2 more chapters after that of them going like, okay, well, we need to find some answers about the whispers. I think I know of someone over here who might be able to give us some answers. Then you go over to this other place and you find out some stuff from them. And then you have another chapter where it's, okay, well, if that means this, then we need to go and do this thing. And then that all leads up to a final boss fight because, again, it just kind of drives me nuts that it's like, okay, story. Final boss is here, everybody. Wait, but I don't, what's happening with the final boss right now? What's going on? What's happening here? I was talking about all this stuff. We did a little impromptu spoiler talk over on Twitch, and everybody knows that I'm a huge Persona fan. And by the way, I know at the moment there's some rivalry going on between the Persona fans and the Final Fantasy fans. Everybody involved in that rivalry, chill out. As I said, I'm older than a lot of you. I remember several years ago when the video game industry was trying to kill RPGs. When the video game industry was saying nobody wants RPGs anymore. They take forever and they're single players and nobody likes single player games. And it blows my mind that right now Final Fantasy VII Remake and Persona 5 Royale, 2 amazing RPGs are out at the exact same time. And rather than celebrating it, we're turning at each other like, well, my thing's better than yours. Everybody shut up and just enjoy the games, man. Everybody just enjoy the fact that we got 2 great things at once. But sorry, that's a little bit of a side rant. As I said, I'm a big fan of the Persona franchise, and someone on Twitch brought up the idea of, hey, remember in Persona 3? How after you think that you have fought the final boss, then it's revealed that there's this other thing, and that there's this other bigger threat out there, and then you have a whole build up to that other bigger threat. This game kind of feels like, to me, if in Persona 3, you had fought the last full moon shadow, and you thought, okay, everything's settled, and then Nyx just appears out of nowhere. And Nyx is there like, yes, now come to the top of this tower and challenge me up here. It's like, wait, what? Who are you? What does any of this have to do with anything? That's kind of how this felt. There needed to be 2 other chapters in there. Like I said, it kind of feels like at least someone in this party should have gone, should we even be doing this? Should we even be fighting fate? Why are we doing this? And all I could think was, imagine if after you escaped from that facility, if you found that Wedge had died again, and then you somehow get a look at the security camera footage from what happened to Wedge, and you see the ghost, you see the whispers attacking him and showing out the window, and you go, oh my god, so they are trying to kill us. That's why Biggs and Jesse died. Not because of the people up top, not because of Shinra, but because these things tried to demand that they stay there, and then all of a sudden they go, yeah, didn't Wedge convince the guy to open up the gate? So doesn't that mean that all the survivors of Sector 7 are now in danger? And maybe you get a big set piece of all the whispers are now heading towards the people from Sector 7, and you know they're going to take out all those survivors because they weren't meant to live. And that's your motivation to, we now have a ticking time bomb. We have to go in there and we have to stop fate before the whispers kill the survivors from Sector 7. We already changed fate once by saving the people of this town. We now have to make sure that they live. Like something like that. Anything more than, okay, we escaped the highway. Final boss time. And before I completely move off of Aerith, let me just go ahead and say, now we're going to start getting into weird theory time. Now it's time that we start getting into weird, bizarre theories, because how does Aerith know about the previous timeline? How does she remember this stuff? As I said, I only got halfway through the original Final Fantasy VII because my PlayStation crapped out and it was just really hard to motivate me to play through 20 hours of something I had already played before I got to anything new. But I have seen how the game ends. I do know how the original game ends. And how it ends, not with the post-credit scene of Red and his family and everything's being covered in vegetation and the forest is returning and all that stuff. No. The way that ends right before the credits is that you see meteor coming down and you see it's about to crush into the planet, but then you see the energy from the planet coming up and it's going up there and it's trying to fight back against the meteor. And then you see all the members of your party looking at. But then the final shot that you get right before it goes to credits is of Aerith. And it's of Aerith right at the beginning of the game. And thinking about that, all I can think is maybe the way that Final Fantasy VII ends is with the planet trying to fight back against Meteor, and then the planet just looks at it and goes, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. Enact plan Groundhog's Day. Because apparently, if you read like all the notes that the creators of Final Fantasy VII had, apparently the life force of the planet is also tied into time. Apparently the life stream actually is connected to the time stream, so it is possible for the planet to send a message back in time. So the theory that a lot of people have is that that shot of Aerith at the very end of Final Fantasy VII is tying into this game here, because it's the planet sending a message back to Aerith at the very beginning, and now we're seeing what's happening in this new timeline that has been created by the planet sending that message back. And that's why this entire game is meant to now be the story about Aerith and her friends trying to change destiny and trying to change everything that happened. And I have heard several fans of the original Final Fantasy VII who have complained about this, saying that's not what the point of Final Fantasy VII was. There were a lot of messages in Final Fantasy VII, which I'm just gonna go ahead and say, a lot of the stuff about the environmental messages, about the big evil corporation stuff, all those messages from the original game, I was really impressed with how much they carried those over into this game. I was really impressed that they did not lean away from any of that stuff in this game. So I was very happy with all that stuff. But I know a lot of people are looking at this like, well, yeah, but like changing time and fighting destiny, like that's not something that was from Final Fantasy VII. And this is going to be my argument for that. My argument is that if that was not something from Final Fantasy VII, or that wasn't the point of Final Fantasy VII, what I would advise people out there to do is not to look at this as Final Fantasy VII. Now, I know, that is going to sound crazy considering this is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I know that's going to sound insane, but hear me out on this. Don't look at this as the Final Fantasy VII Remake, even though it's called that. Look at this as a brand new Final Fantasy game, because there are many Final Fantasy games out there where that is the concept. The concept of Final Fantasy X was about stopping fate and destiny and involved lots of time travel and stuff in order to accomplish that. The purpose of Final Fantasy XIII, which I know is not everybody's favorite, I know I definitely didn't enjoy it, but that was also a theme of that game, was stopping destiny. It was that the gods basically came down, put a big old timer on you, and now you had to figure out a way to prevent your fate. There are many Final Fantasy games in which the theme of it maybe isn't changing destiny, it isn't fighting against fate, but it is a concept of stopping something that is bigger than anyone. It's the idea of stopping something that is beyond the reach of mortals, something like destiny or fate or the future. And that's what the premise of this game is, and I'm looking at this going, okay, they took a very Final Fantasy concept, this concept of going against fate and destiny. And they decided, rather than building a new story around that, they decide, okay, what would really capture the idea of changing fate, of changing destiny? What if we went back to an old story that everyone knows, that everyone, even the people who haven't played the game, know this story. They know these scenes. They know the big beats of this story. What if we went back and we just changed it? And we now had that become a game about changing destiny. So I'm not looking at this as the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I am looking at this as Final Fantasy XVI. And the premise of Final Fantasy XVI is a ragtag band of fighters have to come together in order to stop the wheel of destiny from turning. And the way that they're deciding to tell that story is by having you, the player, stop one of the most famous Final Fantasy stories of all time from happening. So that's how I'm looking at it. Don't look at this as a Final Fantasy VII Remake, even though it's called the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Look at this as a brand new Final Fantasy game that has decided to use the setting of an old Final Fantasy game to tell its new story. But okay, let's go ahead and let's get into the ending and let's get into Sephiroth, because at the end of this game, I was loving this idea of changing fate, of challenging destiny, of trying to go out there and change the things that had already happened and you actually have to fight against fate. I was loving all that stuff, but then like I said, it just kind of came out of nowhere, that final boss fight. There needed to be some kind of a build up to that final boss fight, and where this game ends, there are like 10 things that you don't know, and there's like nothing that you do know. And I looked at that and went, wow, it's kind of weird that at the end of this game, they were doing so well, and then out of nowhere at the end of it, you just had this thing that wasn't really explained all that well just come in here, no one asked any questions about, and now we just don't know anything about what's going on. And then it came up and said directed and character design by TETSUYA NOMURA, and I went, oh, that makes sense. Oh, okay, yeah, all right, that absolutely makes sense. I know that TETSUYA NOMURA is not writing this, but he is directing it, meaning he gets to tell the writers what he wants to do with this. And that is a very TETSUYA NOMURA thing. Having a story where pretty much nothing makes sense until way down the line, and only if you've played every single other thing that has come after it will it all make sense to you. That is a very TETSUYA NOMURA thing. In fact, that's a very Square Enix thing right now, because TETSUYA NOMURA was working on Final Fantasy 15, but he got taken off of that game, so he didn't end up completing that game. However, even if he didn't complete that game, that was still a game where you pick it up, you buy that game, you sit down to play that game, and you just go, I don't know what any of this is. What is anybody talking about? Oh, well, you had to watch the movie that came out, and then you had to watch the anime series that we put up online, and then you have to play all the DLC that comes out for this thing. No, that's a terrible way to tell your story. That is an awful way to tell the story of a game, in which I have to go out there and experience 9 other things in order for any of this to make sense. That's awful. So it's not just TETSUYA NOMURA, it's a lot of what's going on at Square Enix right now. A lot of people at Square Enix Love the idea of bringing in many different other games or other forms of media and having that be the complete picture of your game. And there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for having storylines that continue on from one game to the next and build up over the course of many other installments, and having questions left at the end of a game that lead into the next game that need to be answered. Yeah, all that stuff is great, but TETSUYA NOMURA is a guy who loves to come in here and not give you any answers at all. At all! And then you just kind of have to go into the next game just having faith that eventually all this stuff will make sense. And that's kind of where I was at the end of this game, is that I looked at it and went, okay, we don't know anything. We don't know why Aerith knows about this. We don't know what's going on with Zack. We don't know what the deal with Sephiroth was. Like, something that really sums up my feelings towards this is at the end of this, when they all now have to set out and go on this journey, you see Cloud there, and he just goes, Sephiroth. And then Barrett goes, I thought you killed him. And then he goes, no. Well, he doesn't even say no, he just shakes his head. And all I could think was, okay, they saw you fight Sephiroth. And then you basically just said, no, I didn't defeat him. How does no one have a follow-up question? How does no one have a follow-up question to that? What we needed in that moment was after Cloud just shakes his head, and Barrett says, I thought you beat him, and he shakes his head, Cloud needed to just say, that thing, that wasn't Sephiroth. That was something else, and we need to figure out what that is. Just something like that. Just something to let me, the audience, know, okay, so it wasn't Sephiroth, even though it kind of looked like Sephiroth. Interesting, like, just a little breadcrumb like that. Just something to help me go on. And I, at the end of this, just had no idea what was going on, and I needed something. So we went to Twitch, and we had a discussion about this over on Twitch, and someone in our chat, and I apologize to whoever this was because you deserve some credit, and I don't remember who it was, so I'm sorry. But someone in there, all they said was, hey, did you know that Sephiroth didn't actually get his one wing until Advent Children? I went, oh, okay, that's a cool little detail. I mean, I never beat Sephiroth in the original game, so I don't know that much. But I did watch Advent Children. You're right, he did have the one wing in there. So, okay, so that's a nice little detail. What? That's when it hit me. But he had one wing in this game. Oh my God. And then I went back and I watched the clips from Advent Children. I watched that final fight scene. What does Cloud say to Sephiroth at the very end of Advent Children? He says, go back to my memories where you belong. And then Sephiroth says, I will never be just a memory. And when I saw that in Advent Children the first time, what I thought he meant by that was, I will always find a way to return. I'll always be back. I'll never just be a memory. You'll never be fully done with me. But now I'm looking at this, and Cloud says, go back to my memories. I'm thinking that Sephiroth might have heard that and went, huh, memory, huh? I'll show you what a memory can do. Like, now that's my interpretation of that I'll never just be a memory thing. Now I'm interpreting that like, I'll show you what a memory can do. I'll never be just a memory. Even in your memories, I'm gonna mess you all up. Because if the live stream is in some way connected to the flow of time, Sephiroth at the end of Advent Children could have now gone back in time, and he could essentially just be existing as a concept. Like, he might not actually physically be there in the past. He might not physically be walking around. Like, we see him actually interacting with stuff, but anytime that we see him interacting with stuff, it always turns out it's one of the clones. It's one of those hooded clone guys walking around. So you get this feeling now that maybe Sephiroth from Advent Children went back through the live stream. I'm sorry, my voice is cracking because I'm getting so excited about this. Maybe he went back through the live stream, and now he is basically using Cloud as a tether. He's using Cloud to keep him there in the past, and he's using his connection with Cloud to now interact with the clones so that they can carry out all this stuff that needs to be done. So Aerith has knowledge of the other timeline because Aerith is being informed of this stuff by the planet. Sephiroth has knowledge of the other timeline because he lived it, because he was there, because at the end of this thing, Sephiroth just pops up out of nowhere, opens up a big door and goes, hey, here's how you get to the embodiment of fate. Here's how you get to the thing that controls the flow of time. Here's how you go to the thing that is trying to keep you guys on this specific path. I'm just gonna leave that door open there. You know, just throwing it out there. Maybe you could do something with that. Maybe, I don't know. Here's the big glowing doorway. I'm just gonna walk on through. You guys do whatever you want to do with it. And I'm looking at that going, Sephiroth went back in time and messed with Cloud and all of them so much so that way they would come into contact with the Whispers, with the continuity creeps, and they would now have knowledge of these creatures that are trying to keep fate in line, because Sephiroth knows I was defeated. I lost. You guys beat me. And now fate says that's just how it happened. Fate says I have to lose this battle. So if I want my present day version to have any chance at victory, if I want to give the version of me that is now here in the present day in your timeline a chance to win, I have to now trick you guys into hating the Whispers, into viewing the Whispers as the bad guys, so that way you guys will now go and kill the embodiment of fate. You guys will destroy destiny itself, so that way my present day self can win. Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. I think that the entire reason why at the end of this game you guys go and you fight Destiny is because Sephiroth wanted you to kill it so that way he could win. And as I said, I think that that version of Sephiroth, he was alive inside Cloud's head. I know some people out there think that he was actually alive and walking around and interacting with stuff in the real world, but I think he was kind of just an embodiment of Cloud's mind. Like, he could take on a physical form, because as we saw, he was able to open up that portal, but almost every other time that we saw him taking on a physical form, it turned out it was just one of the clones. I think that there at the end, when he opens up the portal, that was basically just his powers going, okay, now I'm ready that I can finally come out. Now I finally have access to this opening. All the Whispers are here, and now they're all concentrated. I've got the power that I need to open up this gateway. I think throughout the rest of this game, every single time that you see Sephiroth, he's basically just living inside Cloud's head, because there are other moments in here in which Cloud gets not a flash back, he gets a flash forward. There are moments in here in which Cloud gets a vision of Aerith's death, and I think that's him actually seeing Sephiroth's memories. And maybe he actually beat him. It seems like they actually do defeat that version of Sephiroth. They actually do defeat the Advent Children version of Sephiroth. But now we still have regular Sephiroth to worry about. But here's my question. Here is my question. What are they going to do with Sephiroth? Because it seems like now that you've defeated Advent Children Sephiroth, now we have to worry about modern day Sephiroth, which basically means we're going to get some Thanos level interactions with this version of Sephiroth. We're going to have Aerith run up to this version of Sephiroth and go, you took everything from me. I don't even know who you are. I'm looking forward to those moments where they all know Sephiroth and he's like, I don't know who the guy with the gun arm is. Who are any of you? What are you talking about? But I do have questions about what they're going to do with Sephiroth, because we've got at least 2 more games coming. They said that this was going to be a 3-parter, but, you know, they can change that however they want. They can add on more parts. They can add on a mobile tie-in game that's got important information in it. Who even knows what they're going to do with this? But last I heard, they were planning on this being a 3-part story, and we still don't quite know where the story is going to go, because literally how this game ends is it ends with them saying everything is unwritten now. Everything is up in the air. And they give you that sense that anything can happen now, which actually has me kind of nervous right now, because listen, Aerith is going to live. We know Aerith is going to live. They wouldn't destroy Destiny if they were just going to have the same character die all over again. That wasn't going to happen. Clearly this was done so they could save Aerith. So I'm looking over at Aerith and going, okay, you're safe, but now I'm looking at everyone else. And I'm thinking, Oh, but none of you are safe. Literally everyone but Aerith is back on the table right now. I mean, a couple of years ago, I actually went on Twitter when this game was announced, and I said, guys, we all know that Aerith dies, so what if they wanted to spice this game up by coming in here and actually changing it around and actually having Aerith lives? I actually did say that on Twitter, and in all fairness, I wasn't the only one. Many people actually had that theory that that might happen, and so many people came out and said, no, they have to have Aerith die. Aerith has to die because it's so important to the story, and this entire game was about coming in here and saying, Aerith is totally going to live. Aerith is 100% going to live, but if it is that important to have someone die, what if Sephiroth comes down with the sword and then Tifa comes in and shoves Aerith out of the way and Tifa gets stabbed? Imagine how heartbreaking that would be. So as I said, anything can happen now. Anything is on the table, which in my mind means Sephiroth might not actually be the big bad guy at the end of this, because they kind of already gave us the big Sephiroth fight. He literally summons down Meteor in the middle of this fight, and it looked amazing, by the way. Having that thing actually come down as you're fighting, oh my god, that was an incredible fight. It was so good. But we got the Sephiroth fight. We got what we expect from the end of Final Fantasy VII right here, a third of the way into Final Fantasy VII, and now there's another version of Sephiroth running around. Are you just going to have 2 more Sephiroth fights, one at the end of each of the other games that are coming? Because I honestly think they're going to change this a lot. And I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. I'm going to go ahead and put this idea out there on the table right now. I think by the time we get to Disc 3, I think Sephiroth is going to join your party. I think Sephiroth and Cloud are going to be fighting side by side. I think that Sephiroth is going to be in your party. He's going to have his own materia. He's going to have his own upgrade system. You're going to have other weapons that you can give him and equip him. Yeah, I absolutely picture Sephiroth joining your party by the time that we get to game number 3, because A, if we've already fought Sephiroth, what's something new that we can do with Sephiroth? Fight side by side with Sephiroth. And if they already have the big final battle from the original Final Fantasy VII now happen a third of the way through Final Fantasy VII Remake, you have to give us something even bigger, an even bigger threat. And what really shows off the idea of an even bigger threat more than the hero and the villain now having to team up and work side by side? But also, my other reason for thinking this is, honestly, it's almost tradition. Because when you look at a lot of Japanese media and a lot of modern day Japanese stories, the idea of a fan favorite villain now joining the heroes, it happens a lot. It's something that we see happen all the time in video games, in anime. We see the fan favorite villain come back around and now they're working with the heroes. Sephiroth is probably the biggest fan favorite villain in the entire history of Final Fantasy. I can absolutely see, not in the next game, not in Disc 2, but by the time that we get to game 3, I can absolutely see Sephiroth now being a party member. And again, I know people are going to say, you couldn't possibly do that. The entire point that they make at the end of this game is anything can happen. Everything is unwritten. Nothing is off the table. Except for Aerith dying, and honestly, even that could still happen. I've heard some people throw out the idea that they're maybe going to try and take on a Mass Effect style story with this, and I can see that happening, because in Mass Effect, the decisions that you make in game 1 affect the things that can happen to you in game 2, and a character can die in game 3, and they die in game 3 because of the decisions that you made in game 1. I can absolutely see Aerith still dying, but I think that it can only now happen if you do specific things. I think that the reason why these games are so big, despite the fact that they're only like 30 hours long, is the fact that they have to put in there a lot of little calculating data. I think there's a lot of things running in the background of this game that are going to keep track of every decision that you make, so that way, by the time they get to the 3rd game, decisions that you made in game 1 are going to come back around and pay off. I can see this game coming in here and saying, hey, you remember that thing that you did 100 hours ago? Okay, cool. Now it's going to impact whether or not Aerith lives. I can see them doing stuff like that. I can see there coming a moment in which, as I said, imagine if it gets to that scene where Sephiroth is coming down, he's about to stab Aerith, and then Tifa comes in there, shoves her out of the way, and she dies. Imagine if that could also be Barrett. Imagine if that could be Red 13. And what decides who ends up dying in that moment comes down to decisions that you made in completely different games that get carried on into this game. And if you want no one to die and everyone to live, you gotta go in there and do just the right things. I mean, we do know from the original Final Fantasy VII that Yuffie and Vincent were optional characters. They didn't always join your party. So I remember that over in Mass Effect, there were also optional characters who didn't always join your party. And that came down to specific decisions that you made. So now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, what if they adapt that? What if they go in there with that same mentality? And now whether or not Yuffie or Vincent join your party all comes down to the decisions that you made in completely different games. But okay, I think we have talked about almost everything except for the thing that everyone was screaming about at the end of this game. Zack. Zack is alive. Maybe. Kind of. He could be. Who even knows? Yeah, it gets to that moment in which Zack is facing off with all the soldiers, and we know that's how Zack dies. But he ends up living. Apparently you going in there and killing Fate caused Zack to live in the past or in another reality. And that is when we get into really complicated stuff that actually makes me nervous. Because like I said, I was kind of nervous because it's TETSUYA NOMURA, and at the end of this, I didn't feel like they explained nearly enough stuff. I felt like they needed to come in here and they needed to actually have like 2 more chapters actually fleshing out these ideas a little bit more, or someone just needed to ask some freaking questions of each other, and they didn't do any of that, and it was kind of driving me nuts. But when I realized this was Advent Children Sephiroth, I was able to start filling in a lot of the gaps. I was able to start realizing a lot of the answers that I had to the questions that I've been building, and it started to get me all excited again. But there's one thing going on with Zack that has me very concerned, because I look at this and go, okay, this is when it possibly becomes too complicated. Because there's a moment where Zack is staying there, and you see a flyer or a bag or it's something just goes flying by, and it's got Stamp on there. The dog that you've been seeing all throughout this game, except it's a different breed of dog. And my first thought was, okay, I guess that in the past Stamp was a different dog. I mean, it's a branding device. Branding devices change design all the time. So if this happened in the past, they probably create a brand new look for Stamp for the present day. But that feels like a very small and unimportant detail to include in all this, so why would you include that? And then it slowly dawned on me, oh god, this isn't the past, is it? Because why would you destroying Fate in the past, why would you destroying Fate in the present affect something in the past? Why would that happen? And that's when it hit me. They made sure to show you that Stamp was a different dog, so that way you, the audience, would say, oh god, it's an alternate reality. This is not the same timeline. So we've got the original Final Fantasy VII timeline, we've got the Final Fantasy VII Remake timeline, and now Zack is on some totally different timeline. He's in a completely different reality, and I'm looking at this going, okay, timelines were one thing. We could deal with that. I do not trust this game to now start throwing in alternate timelines and alternate realities happening at the exact same time. That is the one thing at the end of this. After I realized the thing about Sephiroth and a lot of my questions started to get answered, that's the thing that I looked at and I went, oh no. Oh, this is a whole other thing. And again, it's okay to have things that aren't answered so you can go into the next game. But this is a big one. And it's something that doesn't even feel like it fits with what we have right now to go off of. So it has me go, okay, are you about to get too complex on this one? Are you about to go Kingdom Hearts level of complicated on this thing? I will admit, this thing has one advantage over Kingdom Hearts, which is that Kingdom Hearts loves to come in here and go, okay, everything we've ever done all comes back around. The mobile games we did come back around. The DS games come back around on this thing. Everything comes back around, but when it comes to the Final Fantasy VII Remake, we already have pre-existing stuff. We've already got Final Fantasy VII, we've already got Advent Children, we've already got Crisis Core, we've already got, what was that one with Vincent, the one that no one liked, Dirge of Cerberus, which actually has things come up in this game, apparently, when you're in the underground base. Apparently that stuff from Dirge of Cerberus, which is why the continuity creeps come in there and prevent you from exploring that one room, because apparently if you went in there, you would now be in Dirge of Cerberus land. Yeah. Everything is coming back, but that is the one advantage we have in this game compared to Kingdom Hearts, is that in Kingdom Hearts, we don't know what any of this means. And hopefully in 9 games from now, it will make sense. In this game, there are things like the Zack alternate timeline that make no sense right now, but hopefully in a couple games it'll make sense. But there are other things that play off of stuff that has already happened that we do have access to, so that stuff makes sense. So I do have hope because a lot of the stuff in this game was really good, but I do have to remind myself, yeah, the guys over at Square, they love to kind of get up their own butts with multiple different versions of a game and with many different bits of lore that are hidden in weird places. The people over at Square currently love to not have their video game be in their video game. And I have fear that they might do stuff like that in the future. But at the moment, there's a lot of good stuff in here. And I'm very excited for the future, but it's a hesitant excitement. I'm optimistic. I am optimistic, but I am still aware of who I'm dealing with on this one. I guess that's the best way that I can sum it up. But I think I covered pretty much everything in here. I know that I didn't really talk about Big surviving there at the end, which is kind of nice, because he didn't really get nearly as much time as Wedge or Jesse. But if anybody was going to survive, I was kind of hoping it was going to be Wedge. But there's also a theory that Jesse survived because at the end you see a glove and a bandana on the table next to Biggs, and some people are saying that's Biggs' bandana and glove, but there are other people saying that belongs to Jesse because Jesse might have survived and she's the one that rescued Biggs, so she left that there for him to find. I don't even know about that. I just want to throw that theory out there because I know someone was going to type it in the comments, but I think that's pretty much everything I got. There are certainly more things to talk about in here, but they're things that I can say for the review, and none of them are really big, crazy spoiler theory things, which I want to cover. I am running out of steam, as you can all tell. You can always tell how long I've been talking for by how much I start slurring all my words and how bad my lisp starts getting. There it was, it just activated right there. So let's go ahead, let's shut this all down right now. I remember when I started talking, I thought to myself, okay, most people's spoiler talks on this have been about an hour long. I'm gonna try and get mine down to like half an hour, just really hit the key points in here. I hit the key points, and we're still over an hour. This was a big one, but I thank you guys very much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII's Remake in the comments down below. And as I said, we do have an official review of this coming up in which I'll be talking about all the other elements of this game. I'll be talking about the characters, I'll be talking about the gameplay, I'll be talking about the music, about the graphics, about all those other elements, and we'll be giving our big score and final thoughts on the game in there. So if you want to see that, make sure that you are subscribed, make sure that you're following us around the web at Thorgi's Arcade on Twitter, or at Professor Thorgi on Twitch. Whew, I think I am now done. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Come back next time.